It's a very complicated puzzle. I mean, recently America has made huge moves to support LGBTQ and diversity initiatives at home. But it goes without saying that progress can't come at the expense of these studios' profits, so we have to tread a fine line. You know, sometimes we're just tampering with something small, like changing the back patch in Top Gun so no one thinks Taiwan's a democracy, popping out a few kiss scenes in Mulan, or getting rid of a couple uncomfortable scenes in Django Unchained. This scene was a big no in China. And sometimes it's something massive, like changing every single Chinese flag to a North Korean flag in Red Dawn. Was my handiwork right there? In industries outside of Hollywood, this game can be a little simpler. You know, Google CEO, for example, was able to vocalize his support for protests domestically while removing any protest-related apps from the App Store in China. And Nike can sort of slide under the radar with the Kaepernick thing here and the you go to jail for protesting over there. They remove a few jerseys and it goes relatively undetected. But in the movie business, it's a more difficult puzzle to solve. The actors in these films have been recently very vocal of their participation in the movement. So it's very important to those actors that we still appear to be supporting those movements here, even though they're being wiped from the films entirely abroad, thus preserving their public image domestically.
You know, comedy is very weird these days because it's literally just narrating what's actually happening. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. Lots of important news, especially with the latest announcement from big tech monopoly corporations that control the free flow of information, along, of course, new troubling developments from PayPal and the ADL. We're going to get into it, plus a lot more. Lots of crazy news to get into, as well as some very surprising updates from Italy. But before we do that, plus a lot more, the beginning of the clip that we played is from a new video by Ryan Long, who does extremely good work. The link to the full video is down below in our description, and I'm very happy that YouTube hasn't figured out how to censor sarcasm yet. Now, don't get me wrong, it will, but it hasn't yet. Now, in related news of free speech being slowly but surely eviscerated from the world, we of course have a massive uprising that we've been detailing on this YouTube channel that is happening all around the world in response to the huge loss of freedom. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, I definitely recommend that you do. And just to update you on the latest information, we also wanted to tell you that there are some reports coming from Florence, Italy, that some police officers have actually joined in on the protest against the very tyrannical Orwellian Big Brother government policies that the Italian government is proposing and decreeing on its citizens. And as people from almost all over the world are standing up or protesting or demonstrating or peacefully coming together to let their voices finally be heard until that right is fully taken away from them, here in the United States, we have tens of thousands of people coming together to celebrate sports ball. Yes, this is the scene in Milwaukee as people are celebrating the Milwaukee Bucks winning a contest. But don't worry, governments all around the world are trying to pacify its citizens just like the Americans are, as we have the latest announcement from the Chief Health Officer of Australia, Dr. Kerry Chant, that is telling Australians to stop talking to each other. Yes, I'm not kidding you. This health official from Australia is telling people to stop talking to each other. Gee, I wonder why they would want to isolate us and prevent us from being able to talk to each other. Also, in a totally unrelated historical fact of the day, which we never had before, but we're going to have it now, it's important to point out that many historical scholars point to bars and taverns being a key crucial location where the American Revolution was fomented in the 1700s. You know, that's just a random historical fact, and I'm going to have more random facts that I'm going to be talking about on LukeUncensored.com later on today, especially a lot of the facts that YouTube doesn't like, that we can't get into, especially with the surprising news coming from the United Kingdom that proves, I can't even tell you what it proves, well, at least here on this platform. There's also some surprising news from the Times of Israel, and just absolutely more draconian, insane news. Yellow wristbands, again, we're going to be talking about that, plus all of the spicy stuff on LukeUncensored.com. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? Also, I just got in our Trust the Science t-shirt because, you know, when it comes to DDT, cigarettes, fluoride, asbestos, glyphosate, and sugar, you should never question the medical professionals since, you know, they were always right on these issues and never wrong. Always, you know, trust the science. Always. Now, back to our main topic. A lot of these protests are happening in response to government lockdowns and restrictions and decrees that essentially punish everyday activities. Those everyday activities that the government punishes that it looks to expand, and it will only do that if enough people allow them to do that. In the United States, the government just announced that it will not lift restrictions for foreign travelers, even though cases are at a new low and deaths are even lower than that. This as, of course, billionaires who benefited off of these restrictions, off of these lockdowns, are playing by a different set of rules and are able to do whatever they want. They want to travel somewhere, they will. They have private islands, they have vacations to go on, they will. You won't. As of course, your life is obliterated as billionaires become richer than they ever have in recorded human history, owning more than they ever have, and will only be expanding from here, as of course the World Economic Forum is still trying to say that billionaires being able to work and make money while you're not is somehow good for the environment, is somehow good for cities and improving the quality of cities. And that is just utterly insane thinking. That is as out of touch as it is nonsensical. As of course, people have been punished in so many severe ways just for trying to live their lives with false promises from government officials that keep raising the stakes and asking more and more from their populations. It started with just 2 weeks. The establishment has new demands. They will have demands after this. It doesn't matter what you meet. It doesn't matter what you do, because there are some government officials that are using this entire situation for political power and gain. The governors of New York, Michigan, and California are accused of that. So is Dr. Fauci, who now might be doing another flip-flop and recommending more mask mandates after, of course, initially telling people not to wear them and knowingly lying to them. You dare question Dr. Fauci? Well, he's not going to answer your questions and name call you. And now these are the same corrupted government institutions that want to decide what you can and cannot hear, as they're waging a, quote, full-fledged assault on misinformation, as the White House announced that it is already helping Facebook censor and delete posts. That's not enough for them, as just now, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, YouTube, and other big tech companies have announced that they're setting up a key database that will crack down on, quote, far-right members and white supremacists. Exactly who is a white supremacist or who is a far-right member? Well, again, that hasn't been clearly defined. There haven't been examples. There haven't been groups. The government, along with big tech companies, are keeping these terms very vague, very generalized, because, again, their scope of reach is going to be vast here. And when it comes to the words far-right and white supremacist, again, these are words that have been overused and in many times ridiculous cases that had absolutely nothing to do with any of those two topics at all. The narrative and discussion in this country has become poisonous, and those two buzzwords, far-right, white supremacists, are used predominantly against a lot of people who don't even hold any of those values, but predominantly do question the establishment. This is a smear word that to a lot of people has lost a lot of value, and now to see these overly abused, vague terms being used as part of a larger counterterrorism effort by big tech and the government coming together, what could go wrong here? What's going to be the problem? Of course, no one's asking, because there are many implications that could absolutely be used for sinister purposes. Now, again, what do they mean by cracking down on material support? Why is the definition even becoming more vaguer from here? We also have to understand that this is coming on the announcement from the ADL that they are working with a new partnership with PayPal in order to, quote, fight hate. What do they mean by hate? Again, very vague, generalized, emotionally linked language meant to evoke a response that is going to prevent any kind of critical thinking or questioning. Obviously, I'm not a hateful guy. I don't like hate. Obviously, but this vague term is left for interpretation. Who's going to be interpreting it? Who's going to be punished? Who's going to be investigated? PayPal, which again predominantly almost has a monopoly on online commerce, how will they be instituting a lot of the policies here? Well, again, we do not know, and because we do not know, this is a threat to people who want to live and sustain themselves and be able to live a life where you're not punished for, quote, wrong things. But the apparatuses of Big Brother are being established all around us in order to stop any form of critical thinking, in order to stop any questioning of authority, in order to allow an ever-growing, powerful entity to become more unaccountable and less transparent. Yesterday, I posted this random photo about the 10 stages of genocide that someone randomly made online, and I asked everyone, where do you think we are? And the vast majority of people said 7. And I think there's fair arguments to make that. And this is not just happening in the United States. It's happening in lockstep and barrel all over the world. And this is why we have seen such large demonstrations against large, unaccountable bodies of government that are literally trying to control almost every aspect of your existence. Again, internal passports to control where you can go is absolutely ridiculous. Even the claims to go after, white supremacists. Let's look at this threat. Let's look at this all-encompassing evil, because according to Newsweek, 64 people died from white supremacy and white nationalism between the years of 2015 and 2019. That's around 10 deaths a year. You compare that to deer attacks. You compare that to slip and falls, where over 15,000 people die from that every single year in the United States. And then we're stopping everything. We're returning the full apparatuses of the police state, of the security tools built off the war on terror domestically to go after a threat that predominantly kills 12 people a year. Again, this is according to Newsweek. Something doesn't add up here. Something doesn't make sense here. Now, of course, any death is a horrible death here. It should always be prevented no matter what, obviously. But when it comes to the government intervening in our lives and using an excuse of a threat that is almost non-existent for the majority of people in exchange to destroy all of our rights, our ability to be able to communicate together, to be able to work together, to be able to actually make and earn money, to give that vast amount of authority to the federal government, and in my opinion, that is absolutely ridiculous. I think something else might be going on here from my own personal perspective. I think this story gets a lot deeper, but again, I can't even talk about it here on YouTube. I have a lot more to say. LukeUncensored.com. And if you agree with me that this is utterly ridiculous, share this video with your friends and family members. Double-click the URL. It's one of the main things that keeps us going. It's one of the main things that allows these videos to get out there. It's you individually taking a small action that absolutely matters the world to us. And if it wasn't for you guys doing that, I wouldn't be here. This is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.